just so I don't forget. And then we'll make sure, can y'all see the PowerPoint slides? Ms. Connie, can y'all see the slides okay?
Yes, I see the slides.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so welcome to our record book workshop. So here's kind of an idea of what we'll be talking about this evening. We'll go over some of the important dates and categories for y'all. Some of the record book judging opportunities. I'm a firm believer that those actually help y'all learn a lot more about the record books themselves and some of the formatting tips and tricks. We'll go over the purpose and objective of the record books, some ideas on the record keeping processes to help y'all from year to year. And then we're going to go through the record book cover to cover this evening. There's a few general tips and guidelines that I'll cover just to make sure we've covered our bases. We'll talk a little bit about the evaluation of the record books and then some of the record books and scholarship type of related things and see if y'all have any remaining questions. Okay, so right now we have 25 main record book categories that you will need to select one of these project areas to submit your record book under. Our district also allows the self-study categories. So if you have a project that doesn't fit within one of these categories, you can submit it under self-study. The challenge with that particular category is it tends to be quite a wide variety of activities that y'all are comparing against each other. So sometimes it's a little bit more difficult depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your record book to compete in that. Okay. And then important dates. So for Comal County, y'all's judging is going to take place on June 22nd, and they're going to be judging with the Hayes County group. They would like y'all to bring your record books to the county extension office by June 15th by 5 p.m. And then y'all can actually pick up your record books after county judging starting on June the 24th. Our District 10 judging is going to take place on July 8th at the Gillespie County Extension Office. So once you've received your record books back from county judging, if you're advancing to district, you'll need to bring your record books back to the county extension office with any changes or corrections that you've made by 5 p.m. on June 30th for them to be able to look over them and get them ready for district. Okay. For seniors, so if you're in 9th through 12th grade, if you place first in your category at the district level, then you have the opportunity to submit your record book for state judging. We don't know the official date of the state judging just yet, but that will take place usually during the first week of August, okay? And then we'll talk about a couple of the judging opportunities. If you'd like to sign up to volunteer to help judge record books at either the county or the district level, Ms. Connie said there will be a Sign Up Genius link in your weekly blog that'll be sent out, okay? So there will be two different opportunities to help with judging, the county judging that's taking place on June 22nd, and then the district judging that takes place on July 8th. Typically, those two judging events will follow a very similar schedule. Usually everybody will get there about 9 a.m. and then usually as soon as everyone gets settled in, usually about 9:15, 9:30, as soon as possible, they'll give a brief orientation for the judges, and then you all will get to judging pretty quickly. Depending on the number of record books that you are judging in each category will kind of determine how long it'll take you to finish judging on those days. Typically, we're done by, I think, 2 or 3 p.m. for most of the county judging. District is a little bit more complicated. Some of those record book categories are rather large and can have somewhere around 24 to 26 books in them, okay? I highly encourage you, if you have a senior aged 4-H member, so they're in 9th through 12th grade, they are allowed to judge the junior age categories, so the 3rd through 5th graders. But that also gives them a leadership experience that they can include for their record books for next year. And then also allows them to kind of see some of the different stories and formatting and see kind of from the eyes of a judge what we're looking for and what experiences the judges are having when they're looking through their record books, okay? All right, so the purpose and objective of a record book is really sort of an evaluation tool for the 4-H members themselves. It's a stepping point to see how you've grown, what you've learned, and how you're kind of measuring up in that project area, what you've managed to accomplish. From our perspective, it's sort of a way for them to demonstrate the importance of record keeping itself, and then also helps with being able to set goals for the future, and also kind of facilitating that documentation and goal keeping process. So they're able to measure whether or not they've reached those goals and if they need to tweak them from year to year. Okay. And then again, it provides an additional level of competition at the county, district, and state level for our 4-Hers. Okay. So in theory, when we're talking about the record keeping process, we're talking about goal setting. So at the beginning of each 4-H year, ideally, you would have set some new 4-H project goals that you would try to accomplish for the coming year. Somewhere during the year, you would be journaling or keeping those records. So keeping tally on your learning experiences, if you've accomplished those goals and how those things have evolved throughout the year. And then this, putting together your record book, would count as more your reflection process, okay? So most of the time, whenever we're giving these record book presentations, we're pretty much already almost done with our 4-H year. So we need to make sure that we're setting our goals from year to year. And sometimes we'll kind of have to backtrack a little bit to remember what we've actually done, because most of us have done a lot of things, but it's hard to keep track of, okay? When y'all are talking about record keeping, y'all need to find a way that works for your family, okay? Your record keeping or tracking and documentation method needs to be easy and sustainable for y'all, and it needs to be done periodically throughout the year, so we're not trying to scramble at the last minute to catch up on everything, okay? That may look different for your family and your needs. For some people, they're really good at keeping maybe a family calendar or a 4-H calendar printed off throughout the year. For some people, it may be taking your project meeting or your monthly club meeting agendas or meeting notes and then putting them in a shoebox or a file binder. Some people have a lot of time on their hands and are able to create those beautiful Pinterest level filing programs and schedule everything month by month and keep everything in a really large file folder, okay? Whatever works for you is the one that you need to use, okay? And then again, as we're putting our record books together, we're focusing on the personal evaluation. Did you actually meet your goals, and what are you planning on changing for next year, okay? So when we're looking at record book components, this is one of the pages that you can find in the record book family guidebook, and I'll show you that website in just a second. So this link that's on here, the texas4h.tamu.edu/recordbooks, is where you can go and download all of the record book forms. So the Word document for the current year, there's access to the Z Suites, online record book suite, some of the trainings for that. They've got some really good category descriptions if you're trying to figure out where your project fits in, okay? But this is kind of one of the overview pages that you can see in there, and it shows you just in one stop, you know, how much space, so the minimum and maximum space for each of the items or each section of the record book that your 4-H member has based on their age group, okay? So if I have a junior member that's grades 3 through 5, then it kind of gives you a little checklist of what to include. So you would have your check sheet, your personal information page, your 4-H story and photo portfolio. Okay, so you would need to include at least 2 pages and no more than 8 pages for that. And then you would jump into your 4-H sections, okay? So let me switch gears and share my screen real quick. Okay, so this is what the record book website looks like. It should have a giant record books at the top page and say Texas 4-H. Okay, so down here are the links. So the Family Guide to Record Books is a really, really good general overview for the record books itself. They have some tips and tricks included in there. There's a state level 4-H record book PowerPoint if y'all need to browse through those at any point, the record book categories. So this is the actual form that you would download, the Word form. And then the access to the Z Suite stuff is included in this link. They've got some sample 4-H stories and a couple of the previous video training sessions that were held by Michelle Mahalik. Okay. So when we go to the family guide, we've got quite a few different things. It'll go into the specific guidelines in assembly. There's some updates on the record keeping process and things like that. Okay. So they'll actually give you some ideas that you can use. This is that overview page that we just saw. Okay. But it'll go through and talk about the assembly of the record book, some tips and tricks on things to include, things like that. Okay. And then let's go to, see if we can open this. Okay. So the record book category descriptions have some pretty good guidelines for which projects fall into which category and everything. So if you need help with those, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us. I know Miss Connie would be willing to help you. I would be willing to help you if you have any questions with that, okay? All right. Okay. So we're going to jump into our cover to cover section right now. So with our covers, the cover can literally be anything that you would like to, okay? It could be a regular 3-ring binder. It could be cardstock paper that you've printed a cover onto that's on the front and back of your record book pages, okay? The official fancy 4-H record book covers are not mandatory at all. You can use, like I said, cardstock, the little 99-cent folders with brads from Walmart or wherever, okay? The green record book cover and the gold and black record book cover can be found on the National 4-H Supply. I think it's the 4-H Mall. They're relatively inexpensive. You can usually check with some of your local county extension offices for the green covers. I think most of us have them for around $3 each if you want to include one of those as your cover, okay? So whenever we open our cover, we're going to jump into the first page of the Word document that you would have downloaded off of that State 4-H record book page, okay? So when you download that Word document, this will be the first page on there, okay? And this is basically just the check sheet. So you're going to focus on filling out this top little box up here with your name. Your guys' county is going to be Comal County, and we are District 10, okay? The age division is going to be based on the 4-H ages. So junior would be 3rd through 5th grades, intermediate would be 6th through 8th grades, and then senior would be 9th through 12th grades. They're going to divide y'all into junior, intermediate, and senior categories for judging. And then the name of your record book category is going to go up here where it says category. And that'll be one of the main 25 project areas. Or if you're doing self-study, then you'll choose the best name possible for that. And I would include in parentheses self-study, okay? Ooh, excuse me, my phone just went off. Let me turn that off right now. Okay. So the rest of this page, y'all don't have to worry about this section down here at all. This is going to be the check sheet that the judges, as they are judging, are going to use to make sure that you've got everything that you're supposed to have in there. Okay, so they'll actually go through and mark off down each column and then put their initials at the bottom. Okay. The next page that is in there is the personal information page. So again, you're going to fill out based on your personal information and everything. Okay. And at the top, just make sure that y'all have your county. So Comal County District is 10. Again, your junior, intermediate, or senior age division, and then what record book category you're in. Okay. The next information will be relative to you. And then down at the bottom, we just need to make sure that you actually put the name of your 4-H club or group, and then the number of the members in your 4-H club. Now, Miss Connie, I know Miss Victoria used to send that number out to everybody. Are y'all planning on including that in the email blast, or how would y'all like to get that information to them this year?
We'll send it out to the club men, or we'll send it out to them. We'll put it on the web. What'll probably happen is it goes out and we'll send it out in the Friday blast, the number of kids in each club so they can pick it out from the Friday blast.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay. And then the last thing that y'all need to remember to do, so the 4-H member, so the person who's actually completing your record book is going to sign down at the bottom and put the date. And then mom, dad, aunt, uncle, parent, guardian, whoever, okay, is going to do the parent signature down there. Again, date it. And then your county extension agent will be the last person to sign it as y'all turn them into the county extension office. Okay. So the next big step in our record book is we have to print off and enter our 4-H story and photo portfolio. So this is the one section of the record book that is not included in that Word document that you download. Okay. So this one you create on your own and then insert between the personal information page and the section 1 that's included in that Word document. Okay. This is where we really get into the meat of your 4-H experience, and you talk about how you've adjusted and what you've been doing for the majority of this year. Okay. As we go through your record book forms, y'all are going to need to include the information for this year and the previous 2 to 3 years. Okay. So for this section, juniors need to have a minimum of 2 pages. Intermediates need a minimum of 4 pages, and seniors need to have a minimum of 6 pages of text describing their 4-H projects, okay? Juniors have up to 8 pages to talk about everything that they've done. Intermediates and seniors have up to 10 pages, and that includes the photos, okay? One of the things that we need to mention whenever we're printing off record books, it is not specifically stated anywhere in the rule books. But typically the rule of thumb is to make sure that you are printing off your entire set of record book forms on 1 page, okay? I think we've had one instance where a family, because part of their project was environmental sciences, they actually mentioned in their 4-H story why they chose to print double-sided so that they were saving paper and conserving resources and things like that. So if you choose to print it double-sided, make sure that y'all mention that here in the 4-H story, okay? You are technically not supposed to be counted off for printing double-sided, but sometimes if they're choosing between a really close record book or 2 really close record books, sometimes they'll use that as a factor in there, okay? This is the section where y'all get to be very creative and show off your personalities, okay? We want all of the personality to come through here. You can decorate this section with backgrounds, word layouts, clip arts, other design elements. You can design this section in Photoshop and get really creative. Some people create news article type things. Some people create blog style type formattings and things like that show off their personality. Some people include some of their sense of humor in the story. We want that to come through, okay? Usually somebody will ask me if they can include sarcasm and things like that. Y'all can absolutely include those things in here as long as you're being respectful about it, okay? This is the only section that can have photos in it, okay? There's a couple of different options for including photos. So some people like to include photos throughout the story as they're talking about those items, which is really nice whenever we're judging it because we like to see what y'all have been up to. And then other people like to include kind of like a fun collage of their photos and what they've done throughout the years, kind of a photo album for the last page or 2 at the back, okay? It is up to you. And then photo captions are optional as you're including your photographs. If you use photos or photo captions, just make sure that you make them count, okay? So if you choose to include your photos throughout the story and you're talking about your dog project, if we see that you are actively working with your dog as you're talking about your story or your dog project at that moment, you may not really have to include a caption there. We can see what's going on, okay? If you are including a picture of you maybe presenting something where it looks like you're standing there with your arms wide open and we can see that you're presenting, but we don't know what it is, you might want to include a caption for that to let us know, you know, I was presenting at my club meeting and things like that, okay? Just kind of make them count. That way you can conserve space and include as much about your 4-H projects as possible, okay? When we're including our photos, they do need to be 4-H related photos, okay? So they need to be related to your 4-H projects, your club work, some of your 4-H learning experiences. You can include photos of your family if that's really important to you and you want to include that. But we want to make sure that we're focusing on our 4-H stuff. So if you're a dual member of 4-H and FFA, you just want to make sure that you're not including some of your FFA photos in there, that type of thing, okay? And then for the photography category, the old rule was that they would allow you a few extra pages to put some of the photos that you had taken throughout the year on them. They actually did away with that rule, I think 2 or 3 years ago now. So just as a reminder, we don't allow extra photos for the photo category. You still have to fit everything on those same page limitations, okay? Okay, so when we get into spacing of our 4-H stories, there's a couple of different options. So usually we say to make sure that you've double spaced everything. You don't have to specifically double space it. There's a lot of styles that include like a newspaper style where they've got 2 columns of text on the same page now. Just make sure that there's enough space in between each line so that the text doesn't run together. For example, example 1, if I have an entire page full of really tiny text that is running together and has very little space in between it, 1, it's really hard to see if there's any information that's been bolded or underlined in it. And it kind of takes away from those techniques to draw my attention to certain information. And then 2, my eyes as a judge are going to get very, very, very tired of reading a full page like that. And then I've still got several more pages to go and the rest of the record books and the rest of the category to finish judging, okay? So you want to make sure that you're doing at least like a 1.5 line spacing so that I can clearly see, you know, there's a piece of information that was highlighted. To me, it's way easier to see the bolding with the space in between the text and things like that, okay? All right, so your 4-H story needs to include information about yourself, your family, and your community, when and why you joined 4-H, project goals with your main project first that you're entering your record book category in, okay? So you would list your record book category first, and then from there you would go from the other projects that you've worked on the most to the other projects that you've worked on the least, okay? We want to know how 4-H has impacted your life and helped you grow. If there's any information that doesn't fit in the rest of the report forms, right now in the photo portfolio and story is a really good place to include that. Again, this is the section where you get to include all of the cool things that you've done, what your favorite or least favorite parts of things were, and you get to show your personality off, okay? So I've got a couple of examples, and I want to say this is actually somebody who used to be in Yalls County, but this is an example of a 4-H story. So he actually made like a news article type one, and the next example is more of a blog style type one. But you can get creative. You can use colored text. When you're including photos, you just want to make sure that they're high quality photos that aren't blurry whenever you increase their sizes and things like that, okay? You can get creative. You don't have to just include your project goals in the larger narrative of the story, okay? You can kind of highlight them off to the side. You can start off with quotes if you have an inspirational quote that speaks to you. If you have a really cool introduction to how you got started. I distinctly remember in Caldwell County, there is a young man that we judged last year that specifically said that he was submitting a record book because his mother made him. And that's okay, okay? But if you do that, just make sure that the rest of your story is a high quality story and you're focusing on the details that you need to, okay? So this is another example of a format that the same young person did, okay? Again, you can get creative with backgrounds, you can include clip art, you can use different applications to create this. If you're comfortable with creating a flyer type of page within Canva, within PowerPoint, Word, I mean, any of those applications that you would like to include or you're comfortable using would work for creating your story, okay? I highly encourage you to strategically use bold text underlining, italicizing, and even colored text to draw our attention to some of the information that you want us to pay attention to, okay? So as we're going through here, you can signal that we started talking about the, I don't know, he's got his swine project there. So we can start off with swine project in bold text, and you can choose a color to assign to it if you want to include like a dark red or something like that. When y'all are using different text for colors, just be conscientious of how some of those colors print out. I highly discourage you from using super light colors like yellow, just because they're really hard for us to see once they've printed out, okay? Okay, do y'all have questions about the story portfolio so far? Y'all are welcome to add them to the chat or unmute yourself and ask them. Okay. Okay, so after your 4-H story and photo portfolio, we're going to jump back into the actual form that would be part of the forms downloaded from the Recordbook website. And the first section that you'll have after your project or personal information page would be section 1. So this is where we first start talking about your 4-H project experiences, okay? So it is pretty much a blank form with this header at the top. Okay, and on these forms, you'll actually see kind of a guideline for what to include in that section. So for instance, this one says, what is your project? How did your project change or grow? What have you done? What have you learned? Include learning experiences in youth and community organizations, but applicable to your 4-H project, individually directed projects, yada, 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 okay? So for this 4-H project section, you are going to talk about up to 4 of your main 4-H projects, okay? So juniors, y'all have a limitation of 2 pages to do that. Intermediates have 3 pages and seniors have 4 pages. So typically for our senior age group, the 9th through 12th graders, I'll recommend that you start out trying to fill 1 page per project for your 4 main projects. Now, if you get to where your main project takes up more than 1 page, that's totally okay. There's one more section where you're able to fit in some of your overflow projects if you work on more than 4 projects. And it also kind of serves as an area where you can fill up your other, maybe 1 or 2 of your other main projects if you're going over onto like 2 or 3 pages for your main record book project, okay? So again, we want to start off and make sure that the main category that we're entering our record book in is listed first. And then we're going in the order of focus or influence. Okay, again, you can totally include individual directed projects. You may just want to include that it was a self-directed project in there. Okay. The other 4-H project section that you have an option of spilling information or adding other projects in is section 4. Okay, and then again, just a reminder, in this section, we're including information on your project for this year and 3 previous years. Okay, juniors will only include this year and the 2 previous years, but intermediates and seniors will have a total of 4 years of information that they would include. Okay, so you want to make sure that in this section, whatever project we are talking about, that name needs to be pretty obvious and upfront, okay? So we need to know what the project name is, what workshops, contests, tours, pretty much any of your learning experiences that you have been to, okay? If you've done self-study or research on those projects, if you did computer learning modules, interviews, and then basically you're going to outline what you did or learned and then kind of show us what records you've been keeping. How have you measured your progress within that 4-H project, okay? And this can kind of look a little bit different for everybody, okay? There are a couple of exceptions depending on what project you're working on, okay? So project-related leadership. So if you did specific leadership activities within your project, So anything that you specifically taught others about or helped lead, you're actually going to report those as volunteer leadership in section 2, the leadership section, okay? Now, if you are submitting a record book in the leadership and citizenship category, then your learning experiences are going to look slightly different, okay? So for most of us, we would include, like if we went to our District 10 leadership lab, for most of us, that would be a leadership experience. So we would include that in the leadership section. However, if you're submitting a leadership record book, you would probably want to include that in your learning experiences, okay? And your learning experiences, you're going to be talking about learning about different leadership styles, how to work with different types of people, different types of communication and effective communication, how to motivate others, okay? Each of those types of things. So again, any learning that is taking place about the leadership experience would go in this section, okay? And then again, because we've got basically a blank form with a header at the top of it, y'all get to decide how to format this, okay? So usually we'll have a combination of narratives and tables. I highly recommend that you use a combination of the two. However, it's up to you and your discretion. A lot of people like to maybe include like a short narrative and bullet points of some of their major experiences. Some of them will organize them by table with a narrative. And again, it's always an option to do just a narrative, okay? We want to make sure that you're using at least 10-point font throughout your record book and everything, just so that we're not hurting everybody's eyes, okay? And so that all of your activities are legible, okay? Ultimately, you really just want to make sure that your project experiences are easy to read and understand, and you can recruit people to help you kind of proofread them and give you suggestions for that. And again, you want to make sure that it's really clear how you're comparing this year and the previous years of experiences for your project, okay? So some examples, I've got a few older ones, and then I've got a few of them that I've created based off of some of the tables and formats that I've liked as a judge. So this is kind of an older version of a sport fishing one. This one does not compare from year to year. This one just has the single year. So I would immediately have questions about, is this their first year in 4-H? Or is this the first time that they've put a record book together, things like that, okay? So if this is your first year in 4-H, or this is your first time putting a record book together, you want to make sure that you mention that in your 4-H story and photo portfolio. So that way I can kind of go back and go, okay, so this is kind of my context for how much experience they might have, okay? So this person did some pretty good record keeping. So I've definitely got numbers that I could compare from year to year. So they kept track of how many hours they spent doing some of the activities, the number of fishing trips, number of fish caught, cooked, clean, etc. Okay. So we've got some good numbers. I can see they did, so they participated in some demonstrations or attended them. And then there were some exhibitions that they participated in or attended, okay? And then they've got some different learning experiences down here. So we've gone to at least a couple of county and state level learning experiences. We did some of our own research, okay? Did some tours, read magazines. So those are all some really good learning experiences there. Usually it's not clear in this particular example, but this column right here under the 2011, 2012 would be the number of experiences that they attended. And then usually these codes over here, we'll see them a little bit more clearly defined in some of the structured forms later on. But usually the C will identify club or county, S will be referring to state, N will be national, and then I will be international. Okay, so you can kind of code what level these learning experiences might be. Okay. So this is an example for a beef project. Okay, so this one does a really good job of comparing from year to year. Okay, so we've got number of cattle owned, heifers, steers. We kind of kept track of the year-end value of cattle, income, how much money we spent purchasing them. Okay, kind of some general numbers. So for some of these projects where maybe you don't you want to include some of your financial information just for record keeping processes, but you don't have to specifically go into a whole lot of detail. You'll kind of need to decide as a family how much of that information you're comfortable with sharing, okay? In general, I think if you've been keeping track of like your general purchasing price and then your feed and vet fees, things like that, another good number to show would be like your show entry fees or something like that, just to show that the kids are conscious about how much money they're spending in relation to some of these experiences and projects, okay? In this one, if I didn't know much about the beef project and I was kind of looking at this record book initially, I'd be a little bit confused about the way they have this number in the top row, okay, of cattle owned. So for this one, they've got 35 bulls and 17 cows is what that B and C delineates. So one of my feedbacks for this particular table would be to be a little bit more specific or have like a little key or something like that so that it was easy to understand, okay? This one I like because it has a table and then it's kind of got a little summary statement talking specifically about this year. They expanded their beef project to 32 breeding females and 3 bulls, etc. I would like them to go into a little bit more detail on what their learning experiences were. So that's the main thing that is lacking from this example, okay? And then here's a couple of other table examples just for some different styles of projects. So clothing and textiles, you can keep track of, depending on what your goal is with it, if you bought fabric, if you bought casual items, dress items, accessories, materials that you purchased for competing in the district or county contest for fashion storyboards. If you created a textile like a quilt or something like that, how much did your fabric cost you? How many yards of fabric did you go through? Things like that, okay? And again, we've got a good example of keeping track of them from year to year up here, okay? Food and nutrition, very similar. So this person kept track of the number of meals and snacks prepared, the cost of food prepared, and the hours spent in project, okay? Again, in both of these examples, I would like to see more of what their learning experiences were and how in-depth they got with the information, things like that. For the food and nutrition, there's lots of different things that you can keep track of there. It could be the number of competitions you went to. It could be the number of practices you attended for which aspect of the food nutrition project you're participating in. So if you did food show versus food challenge, are you keeping track between those two? How much did you spend preparing for each of those contests? Things like that, okay? All right, so this is an example of a table where they're including the knowledge gained and learning experiences for the year. This person included a table style with the year. Again, they coded it for local, county, and district, it looks like, okay? So they listed that they participated in county food camp and food show meetings. I would like a little bit more detail on how many meetings they went to, okay, things like that. This person had some learning objectives identified, so they quantified which of those learning experiences met those objectives. So I would want those outlined somewhere, okay? Let's see, so they collected and traded recipes in the recipe notebook, okay, with whom and where? They toured a local H-E-B grocery store, excellent. So really this is a good starting space, but I wish they would include a little bit more information just so we knew, again, you know, was this a high quality experience? How many experiences did they have? Maybe how many hours they spent preparing for those different things, okay? All right, so this is another example. So for a beef project, this is kind of an example of some really good information, but the formatting makes it very overwhelming to look at from a judging perspective, okay? So they've got lots of good participation. We've outlined which years they participated in those activities, and they've got some good information. So we see they spent 8 hours at the Southern Plains Beef Symposium in Ardmore, Oklahoma. They've done, looks like a bi-county beef showmanship and fitting clinic for about 6 hours. And then they also outline the level of experiences that those were at. And they've got a summary at the top. Okay, so again, we've had 2 national, 20 state, 7 district, and 9 county experiences. And then we've got learning objectives outlined down here. Okay. And like Miss Connie said in the chat, the Explore guides are good places to get some of the ideas for some of the learning experiences and project goals. Okay. Most of those are available on the Texas 4-H Project website. Okay. The next 2 or 3 examples are ones that I've kind of created just as a starting point for people based on some of this table styles that I've liked. So again, really, it's kind of deciding what y'all are able to keep track of, if you've kept track of them for this year, or if you're just starting out now as you're learning about record books. That'll kind of determine what level of detail you're able to provide. Okay. Typically, if you've got an animal project, we want to know kind of on average, how many animals have you owned? Have you bred them? Did you show them? If you participated in shows, did you do it at, you know, the major or state level, or if you did it at local or county level, okay, or some of the jackpot shows? If you've kind of kept track of some form of monetary cost associated with it, so that we can see you're aware of that. And again, kind of your activity or learning experiences, if you're doing them from year to year, and then what level you've done them on. And then usually I like to see if y'all have done project exhibition with your project. So again, if you're starting out with an animal project, so shows are a great way to exhibit your animal, but you can also do public speaking or educational presentation, or participate in livestock judging or quiz bowls and things like that. Those all count as some form of exhibition and competition where y'all are learning too, okay? And then down at the bottom, just kind of leaving a little bit of space for maybe some narratives on what your favorite experiences were, if you're tweaking anything for next year, things like that, okay? So again, this would be an example for like a dog project that's just starting out, that may not have the same type of information as some of the livestock projects. I think I've seen a couple of them that they include some of their names of the dogs and things like that that they're working with, or animals that they're working with. So again, we've included some of the numbers that we can compare from year to year to see if we're growing or keeping consistent within our project. Got our learning activities, experiences, the years and level, some of our exhibitions. And then down here, we've got a little bit better of an example of a narrative. So kind of just giving an update on, you know, what animals they've been working with, how long, if there was anything that I'm working towards. So for instance, this one, we're going to focus on learning more about therapy dogs and things like that. So I've bolded that to draw people's attention to that. Again, I can also use colors and things like that to draw our attention to different key pieces of information there. Okay. Okay, and then leadership projects, same thing. So maybe I've kept track of leadership roles, the number of hours I spent learning, how many workshops I attended, the number of hours I spent in leadership roles or county leadership roles, whatever the case may be. Okay, it's really just kind of about finding some easy numbers to compare from year to year that kind of help to determine the quality or the intensity of the experience that you've had. Okay. So again, their learning experiences might look a little bit more like research communication styles, gone to leadership lab, attending workshops on some of the communication styles, the Lead Academy, things like that. They might be working towards events like the Texas 4-H Congress or the Leaders for Life contests. Maybe they hosted a booth on leadership or helped provide some leadership training to some of the different groups in the county. Okay, they might have given an educational presentation. Okay. Some other ways that you can include this. So this person had 4 different projects that they kind of devoted. I think for the most part, they did 1 page for each project area, and they included a lot of really good narrative information on those projects and some of their exhibitions and things. But their activity list, they included as 1 table, and it was color coded based on their projects. Okay. So again, that was very specific to them, and it made sense for them to kind of outline the different levels and things like that in the years that they had participated in those projects that way. So you can format this in any way that works for you. When you are color coding, I highly recommend that you use the same colors for each project that you're talking about throughout the record book, okay? So if you list your horse project as green in your section 1, or even in your 4-H story, then you would need to make sure that anytime you talk about the horse project, some of those information that you want to highlight about that project is highlighted or bolded in green, okay, throughout. And we've got a couple of examples I'll show you. When y'all are thinking about color coding, usually greens, darker greens, reds, blues, purples, some of the darker oranges are all really good colors to use. This is where we get complicated, is with the yellows. This is a pretty good yellow to use in the way that the table is here, but because we have white text on top of the yellow, it's really hard for me to read that. So that's going to kind of hurt my eyes and make it a little bit harder to understand what's being listed there. If you're going to use a yellow in this style, then you can do it, but make sure that the text on top of it is black so that we've got a high level of contrast there, okay? Okay, do y'all have any questions about section 1, the main 4-H projects? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to section 2, which is where we get into our leadership experiences. So this is the first one of our structured form. So whenever you get this on the Word document, you're going to see this header, and then it's got a structured form that has 25 rows on it, okay? So again, it's got instructions at the top for what to include. The gist of this is we're going to include the year that we did the activity, a name of whatever leadership activity we want to describe. We're going to show what role we did, if that's elected, appointed, volunteer, or promotional, what level we did, so club, county, district, state, national, and international, okay? And it does give you a little guide at the top, okay? And then a general description of what responsibilities and duties you actually did in that leadership activity or role, okay? So with this form, so juniors, 3rd through 5th graders have a maximum of 10 entries and have up to 1 page to fill with it. Intermediates are going to have a maximum of 15 entries and 2 pages, and then seniors have a maximum of 25 entries and 3 pages. My biggest pet peeve is just making sure that you delete the unused boxes. Anytime that you have empty boxes towards the end of that form, you want to make sure that you delete them. So 1, you've got extra space for you to be able to fill out without meeting those page limitations, okay? And then 2, you're going to show, you're going to be able to have more room for a higher quality description, okay? The biggest issue with this particular form is that people really don't describe what they did in that leadership role effectively, okay? So if you were a county council officer, okay, great. What position were you? How many meetings did you go to? What did you actually do in that role, okay? We want a high quality description of what you're doing, okay? We want to see a combination of project-related leadership and general leadership experiences within your community and your 4-H clubs, okay? Now, leadership that is a part of a community service project or related to a community service activity needs to be reported in section 3. So if you were a leader and you planned a community service activity, you would actually move that to the community service section, okay? And then, so the fundraising rule that I've got at the bottom, there's 2 different types of fundraising activities that you will probably take part in, okay? If you are fundraising for your county or club 4-H related activities, those need to be listed on the leadership page, okay? Those are going to be promotional leadership activities where you directly benefit from those funds that are being raised. If you are participating in the second type of fundraising, where I always go back to the Hurricane Harvey activities, just because that's one of the major ones that happened a couple years ago, okay? So if you fundraised to help support somebody or a community or some activity that is not related to your activity and you're not going to benefit, then that would be considered true community service, and that would be listed on the community service page. Okay, does that make sense to y'all? So if you're benefiting and it's going locally, then it's going to be a leadership experience. If you're fundraising and it's going outside of your community and you don't see any benefit from that, then that would be community service, okay? Okay. So we are looking for a balance in the variety of types and levels of leadership experiences that you have, okay? And this is going to look a little bit different depending on if you're a junior, intermediate, or senior. Okay, seniors, we want to see a wide variety that's kind of evenly spaced across the different types. Okay, juniors, y'all are kind of just getting started out, so you may have a heavy promotional or volunteer leadership. Okay, so when we're talking about the three types of leadership, and I lump them into three just because elected, appointed usually go together. Okay. So when we're talking about promotional leadership, it's basically, have you talked to somebody about the 4-H program or promoted the 4-H program? Okay. If you're looking at volunteer leadership, we're talking about what did you do to lead or teach within that project or within the general 4-H club. Okay. Volunteering also is, volunteer leadership also counts if your agents asked you to do anything or voluntold you, as we joke about. Those count as volunteer leadership opportunities. If Miss Connie asked you to hand out papers at a meeting, if Miss Connie asked you to set up the meeting space or run a few errands or things like that, those would all count as volunteer leadership opportunities, okay? And then elected appointed leadership is going to be more your council officer, club officer, ambassador type roles. And they're focused more on what did you do to improve 4-H or help it function, okay? And then when we're looking at levels, we want to see a variety of levels. National, if you can do national, that's awesome, but we're not so much focused on national. We want to see that you're doing stuff within the club, county, and district primarily. And then state is also really nice. So state, if you went to any of the LEAD Academy, if you participated in Texas 4-H Congress, if you did some of the Texas 4-H Council learning stuff, things like that, those would all count as state levels. If you participate in a livestock show, those are state level opportunities, okay? So in our descriptions on our leadership experiences, I'm a huge proponent of using the verbs of leadership, okay? You need to show us what you did that was leadership. Did you coordinate, lead, organize, plan, create, assist? Did you present, arrange, whatever it may be, okay? You need to use a leadership verb that shows how you were a leader. What did you do that was actually a leadership role? Okay? So some project-related junior leadership examples would be serving as a junior leader for a certain project. If you planned a workshop, planned a field trip, guest speaker, et cetera, for your project, created educational activities. If you helped to design or conduct an evaluation or judging of an event, if you served as a judge for something, so like we were talking about judging record books earlier, that would count as a leadership opportunity, okay? It can be project related if you're an expert in that project, okay? And if you led any activities related to your particular project, okay? And again, this is a structured form. If you have project related experience and you've decided to color code your projects, you can bold and highlight that activity and color code it so that, like if we were talking about our horse project that was green, if you did a leadership activity in the horse project, you could highlight that in a green color, okay? Some club leadership examples. So club officers, if you served as a committee chairman at the club level, led some educational activities at the club meetings. If you were part of a club activity, so I'm trying to think of some of the examples. You might have had a club booth, anything like that, at like a 4-H 101 night. If you led recreation, if somebody asked you to do the pledges, help set up for the meeting, if you were responsible for like scheduling the workers for some of the club responsibilities, if you served as a junior leader within that club, okay? County leadership kind of varies by your county and some of the opportunities that you'll have. Most of us have a county council at any of the county events. So if y'all are working on like a county camp or something like that, if you led or helped plan any of those activities, those would count. If you led or assisted with any kind of county event or workshop that was put on by your county agent, holiday parties, dances, if you were part of the group that helped with like a record keeping workshop or something like that at the county level, those would all count. Okay, district and state leadership examples, they're going to vary a little bit again, just based on where you're located. So if you were part of the district or state council officers, if you led recreation at one of the district or state events, assisted with any of those workshops, attended the District 10 Leadership Lab, and brought back some of that information to your club or county, those that all count, okay? Okay, so we talked about some different types of leadership. So we had promotional, which was talking about 4-H. We had volunteer, which is basically helping to put on something. Okay, and then we had elected appointed. So as we go through here, we're going to kind of test ourselves real quick. So on number 1, if we wore a 4-H t-shirt to school and visited with 10 students, which one of those types of leadership would that be? What do y'all think? And you're welcome to type it in the chat or unmute yourself as we go through these two. So if I wore a 4-H t-shirt to school and visited with 10 students, would that be volunteer leadership, promotional leadership, or elected or appointed leadership?
Promotional
It'll be
leadership.
promotional, absolutely. All right, so our next one, number 2, we've got a 4-H open house. I advertised, planned, and promoted the 4-H open house. We made plant pals, free carnival games, and popcorn. We reached 500 people. Which one of those 3 types do y'all think that would be?
Give us the types again, because I can't see them on the slide.
You're fine. We've got volunteer, promotional, or elected appointed.
Volunteered.
Okay, there is some volunteer leadership in there. There's also some promotional leadership in there.
Oh,
So
it's kind of half and half. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of times we forget that some of these leadership experiences can be more than one type, okay? So obviously if I help do all of those things with the 4-H open house and we're talking about the 4-H program and advertising it to people, it counts as both volunteer leadership and promotional, okay? All right, number 3 should be pretty easy. So we're focusing on if it's promotional, volunteer, or elected appointed. So number 3, I volunteered to set up chairs and tables at 2 club meetings. Yep, okay, it's right there in the answer, okay? All right, so number 4, we have a county 4-H council barbecue fundraiser. I sold 40 barbecue tickets. You think it would be promotional, volunteer, or elected appointed?
Promotional.
Okay, it's probably promotional since we're doing a lot of 4-H council stuff with that, okay? And then number 5, I led the pledges at the club meeting. It'd be promotional, volunteer, or elected appointed.
Elected appointed.
Okay, so again, this could be either or, okay? So the Strother family says volunteer. So both of y'all are correct. It depends on your club situation. So for some clubs, they will appoint someone to lead the pledges at the club meeting, or they might select volunteers, okay? You can include it as volunteer or appointed, but I highly encourage you to kind of clarify in that description, is it a permanent thing? How many times did you do that? Or the number of meetings that you did that at, or if you volunteered for that one meeting, okay? Just to increase the quality of your description, okay? So when we're talking about the descriptions, this is kind of an example that we went over with our county not too long ago, okay? We really want y'all to show us what you've been doing, okay? So anytime that you have numbers, and this goes for the community service one too, anytime that y'all have numbers that show us how many people or how big of an impact you had in that activity, please include them, okay? So again, we can include the years that we did them, and there's a couple of different styles that you can use. You can do 2018, 2019, or just include 18, 19. If you did it for more than 1 year, I highly encourage you to consolidate those years that you did it, so that that way you're getting a really good description in, and then you might have space for a couple of other activities that you did in the form as well, okay? And again, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can either do it as the full span of, I did this from 2019 to 2021, or you can do it as 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2019 or 2020, 2021, kind of on different lines within that same cell block, okay? So your leadership activity is just going to be a very basic description of what it was, what your role and level was, and then a really high quality description of your responsibilities or what you did with it, okay? Excuse me. If we're talking about some of the club or council officer positions, again, I want you to include, you know, if you've done it for a year, 2 years, if you've done it repeatedly, by all means, include more than 1 year there. Maybe how many council meetings you went to and what you actually did within that officer position. I think sometimes we forget that our officer positions can vary from club to club and county to county. So if yours does something really cool, or you have a really good description of what you're doing. So if you're a secretary, you know, you recorded minutes, you supported the officer team by distributing minutes or reminding them what we did last time. You were responsible for communicating some of the ideas that the council decided on to the county extension agents. Whatever you did in that role, make sure you include it, okay? And again, you can highlight some key information. So if it was really important that you went to 12 different council meetings, you can bold text that or underline it, okay? And again, if you did something like serve in an ambassador position, what did your ambassador group do? What did your ambassador group do, okay? Making sure that you show that you designed and facilitated something, you helped lead, whatever. So in this case, they helped design and lead a virtual fashion and interior design camp. It was a 6-lesson series, and then they actually prepared the materials for and led the sewing session. So I know exactly what that person did, okay? If you're part of an education project that went across clubs or went across counties, whatever the case may be, include that in the description, okay? So again, we've got our leadership verb. I served as a team leader for the multi-county project. I led and presented the introductory session there were 14 people at that one. But what was cool about it was they were all from 3 counties, and then we had 2 different districts at that particular project, okay? And then they go on to say what they actually did for those different sessions, okay? Oop. Okay, do y'all have any questions about the leadership section? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the community service section. So section number 3. And again, this is another structured form, and it has the same limitations as our previous section. And then kind of the same guidelines. Okay, so we want to include the year or years that we did those activities. So again, if you have a kind of an annual community service project, you can sum that up across one experience line if you need more room, okay? You're going to outline your role, okay? So at the top, it explains up in the description. So Y stands for yourself. So you, yourself, and you. A member of a group, And then primary leadership. So again, if you led or organized or used one of those leadership verbs to facilitate that, okay, then that's where you would include this, your leadership for your community service project, okay? So on the service activity section, you're going to include kind of a brief name of the activity, and then the importance and impact is very similar to the description of the responsibilities and duties from our leadership section, okay? You're going to include a high quality experience. If you can include numbers, make sure you include numbers because that tells us how many people that impacted, okay? And those numbers might look a little bit different depending on what type of community service that you're doing. It may include the number of hours that you guys did it, the number of people who helped with the community service project, the number of items collected or donated or made, okay? Kind of just depends on what you're able to keep track of there. Okay. Again, we're going to make sure that we delete those unused boxes to maximize our space and make our forms look very neat and tidy. Okay. And then basically the focus on this section is what did you do to help other people because you were a 4-H member? Okay. We do want to see a balance between those 3 different types of roles. Okay. So again, Y is you, yourself, and you. You led that activity without help from other 4-H members. M, if you're a member of a group, so you helped a group when somebody else asked you or because you were excited about what they were doing, okay? And then primary leadership, you were one of the organizers, arrangers, and you helped to recruit other 4-H members, okay? If you're in the senior age category, then you need to aim for at least 1 to 3 of those primary leadership roles, okay? So again, if you're a senior 4-H'er, we want you to kind of move up in that leadership world and see where you're organizing or leading those roles, okay? Okay, so get an importance and impact. We want to make sure that we're explaining why that was helpful or important to the community. A lot of times in the past, I've seen lots of descriptions that kind of explain the impact that it had on you personally. And that's okay to a point, but when we're talking about community service, we want to make sure that we're talking about how y'all are impacting your community, okay? So really we want the description to focus more on the service activity and a little bit less about you, okay? Again, when we're listing community service activities, we want to make sure that they're not necessarily just activities that are benefiting us, okay? Again, including numbers where we're able to, if we know the number of people impacted, if we have the number of people involved, number of hours served, etc. Okay, anything that you can count, make sure you keep track of, write down somewhere and include here. Again, we want to make sure that we've got a couple of project-related community service projects and then or activities and some general service activities. Your citizenship experiences where you're being a little bit more civically involved might go under your experiences in section 1. And again, so I've got no fundraising experiences listed in this section. The exception is if your fundraising is going outside of your community to impact others, okay? You're not directly impacted, then you can include it in this section, okay? So some examples of yourself, okay? So types of leadership where it's just you might have donated your clothes to Goodwill. If your parents donated some things to Goodwill for you, you get to count those things, okay? If you personally decided you were going to donate things to the animal supplies, to the shelter, things like that, okay? Anything that you've done by yourself. We did have a question come up not that long ago in our county about if they do some community service as a family where maybe they're donating some of those things to the church. And some of those things might be project related, some things might not be. I told them it was my personal interpretation that you would put it as yourself. So if you wanted to count those activities that you're doing as a church member, you could potentially include that under yourself, okay? The caveat is they need to be project related. Any non-project related church activities are going to go under the non-4-H project experience that we'll talk about in a few minutes, okay? Excuse me, my allergies are getting to me. Okay, so if you're a member of a group, some examples would be like if you participated in a club or council service activity, if you gathered and donated supplies to like the hurricane victims or a statewide activity. So some of the district activities, some of the statewide community service activities, those would all count as members of a group. Okay, you're not doing that alone. There's other people participating in it. And then again, primary leadership, you're using those leadership verbs again. You arranged a countywide community service activity. And again, you're going to show that you led the Blankets of Love project or whatever project it was and coordinated with the club manager on how to get it going. Okay. And I think we're running short on time, so I won't go through this little test yourself right now. Okay, but these are some examples that y'all can use. So pet toy drive, I coordinated and led an event to create and donate dog enrichment toys for the Austin Humane Society. 75 toys were made and donated. It's a pretty good description. I did that myself, so that would count as a you or yourself experience. Excuse me. The school supply drive, I donated 5 large boxes of school supplies to the Boys and Girls Club of Austin. Okay, again, I would leave it a little bit more information to determine on if this was yourself or a member of a group. Right now, our District 10 community service activity is a school supply drive. So if I did that as part of that, then I would be a member of a group. Okay. And then pet supply drive, the club collected 400 pounds of food and 300 supply items to benefit 120 animals. I collected 50 pounds to contribute. So that would be a member of a group activity. Okay. Ooh, and then number 1 would be primary leadership because I coordinated and led. Okay. That was important. Okay. So again, some other examples of descriptions and everything. Some of those primary leadership activities are the ones that we were focusing on with this particular example. So again, we've got description of the name, coordinated and led, those activities, 75 toys were made and donated. So I wanted to highlight that 75 toys were made and donated. We had a club community service chair position in one of the clubs. So they actually had to specifically talk about their leadership role within that position, and then what they did that was cool or different in that particular chair position. Okay. This is kind of an example. So their fashion and interior design project is color coded as blue in their record book. So we were talking about the hats for Christmas. They also added the little note that it was project related under it, but she color coded it as blue and then highlighted some of the information in it. So she planned and coordinated the hat making project. They donated them to 2 or 3 organizations that they're working on finding the names for. They recruited 12 people. So that was a cool fact about that. And then she included the total hats that were made and donated, including how many she personally made. Okay. So those would all be really good descriptions to include there. I can definitely tell that y'all were heavily involved in them, and it shows how much of an impact that you had. Okay. Y'all have questions about community service so far? All right. Okay, so other 4-H projects. So this is the other, or kind of overflow 4-H section is what I call it. Okay. So juniors, you have a maximum of 1 page here. So anything that didn't fit in your section 1 could go here, or if you have other projects that you would include those here. Intermediates and seniors, y'all have up to 2 pages here. So you have a little bit more room, could probably get a little bit more in depth with those project descriptions. And the big thing is you want to make sure that you're following the same types of formatting that you decide to use in section 1. Okay, so again, you're going to get this page with this header at the top of it, and then it's blank after that. Okay, so whatever, if you decide to use tables and narratives or bullet point or whatever, just make sure that you're using that same formatting here and the same guidelines. Okay. And again, we're looking for a comparison across the years of how in-depth you're getting with that project area and what your learning experiences were. Okay. We're getting close to the end, I promise. Okay, so 4-H recognition and awards is section 5. Okay, so again, we've got a structured form. We've got very similar page limitations and everything. We are going to focus on why these awards were important to you, okay? So you're literally listing the awards that you care about as a 4-H member, okay? And again, we're gonna make sure that we delete unused boxes and we're focusing on the description of the quality of the description here, okay? So you're gonna include the 4-H year that you earned that award in or recognition, okay? The level that that award qualified as, so if it was a club, county, district, state, national, international, what the title of that recognition was and why it was important to you, what impact it had on you personally, okay? I think with this particular section, it is really easy for the juniors to forget that it doesn't have to be a ribbon or belt buckle or formal star award for it to count as an award, okay? The key there is recognition. If you got a shout out for being the hardest working 4-H kiddo at that club meeting, if you, if somebody recognized you or thanked you for doing something for them, if that mattered to you, that counts as a recognition for this section, okay? So the big thing about this section is I see about 1 million, this award showed how hard I worked, or my hard work paid off, therefore I earned this award, okay? That's a really lame description. I will personally set your record book on fire if I see that. I'm totally joking, but it is, if we see that description, it's kind of a lazy way out. And at that point, it kind of looks like you're just kind of filling in the award section and, you know, checking off those items, okay? What we really want to know is literally when we ask you about your awards and recognition, why did that one come to mind? Literally, why do you care about it, okay? For some people, it might be because it was their first year ever to win showmanship and you worked really, really hard for that. You know, you had been working for 3 years to try and achieve that. And, you know, obviously your learning experience has paid off. You know, you were rewarded for that hard work and dedication. Okay. If you had specific improvements that you were making, okay, and you placed higher. So I always go back to, like, if you have your own breeding animals and things like that, there's a couple of our families that were really excited because they had been working together. It was a young man, his father, and his grandfather. They had collectively set a goal to win one of their local county shows with one of the animals that they bred, not purchased. So they had continuously made improvements over, I think, like a 10-year process or something like that. Well, one year they finally won the show. But they also kept track of, you know, hey, last year we placed 12th with one of our lambs. That was awesome. This year we placed 9th. It actually reflected the improvement that we made and showed that we were making progress, and it was a really fun learning experience, okay? It could be that that was the highest you had ever placed at a competition, and that really made an impact on you. That's awesome. You know, did it encourage you to do something? Did it encourage you to keep pursuing that project area, okay? Did it push you towards a different area of that project, okay? Kind of showing, like, if those awards are helping you to kind of keep track of how far you are in that goal setting process or goal achieving process, include that in the description, okay? Again, just make sure it's not it showed how hard I worked type of description, okay? Do y'all have questions about any of the awards or recognitions? Okay. All right, so section 6 is our non-4-H activities. Okay, so this is the one section where you get to show off what you've been doing out in the community outside of 4-H, okay? This can include any of your school activities, if you're in band, FFA, FCCLA, if you're in chess club, whatever the case may be, okay? It could be all of your church activities, any other community organizations, if you're part of a Rotary Club, if you're part of a Toastmasters, if you're part of like a Masonic associated group or things like that, okay? Those would all be things that you can include here in non-4-H activities, okay? There's a couple of different ways that you can organize this section, because again, you're gonna get this header, and then you're going to get a blank page. So you get to decide how you're going to do that. Usually I recommend that y'all follow kind of a similar format to what you've decided to do with your 4-H project section in section 1, but it can be a little bit different here. Some people choose to organize it by, this is my school activities, here's the cool things I've done there, here's community service and leadership and awards that I earned in my school activities, and then they'll go on to church and do the same thing. So church, learning or cool activities, leadership roles, community service, and then awards. And then they'll go on to some of their community organizations. Okay, and that's cool. Some people will organize it by, here's some of the cool activities that I did, and then they'll list school, church, and community stuff together, and kind of go section by section through that. Okay, totally up to you. Really, it's just showing off that you're a well-rounded young person. You've got some other organization involvement out within the community. I recommend if you're looking for a starting place and you don't have kind of an idea of how you want to organize it, just kind of think of, again, some of those activities. What activities did you do? Did you have any leadership roles? Did you have community service? And then were you recognized within those other organizations? Did you have any really cool achievements that you think would be a good addition to your record book? Okay. Do y'all have any questions about the non-4-H section? Joseph said he used to be in chess. Awesome. I also used to be in chess club. Okay. All right. So section 7 is our college and career exploration page. So again, it's a structured form. Okay. And there are 2 things that we need to be aware of. One, that it's the structured form. And then 2, there's this little hidden sneaky thing right up here at the top where it asks, as of today, what career would you choose? So it's basically asking, when do you want to grow up? What do you want to be? Okay. So whatever your career pursuit is, the moment that you're filling out this record book for this year, you would include that career there. So if you are aiming to be a veterinarian, you would include veterinarian there. If you know you're destined to be an aerospace engineer, you would include that there. Now for juniors, the 3rd through 5th graders, it might be something silly. Some of our younger kids are still set on being race car drivers. Some of them are going to be waste experts. Some of them are going to be like a semi-truck driver, whatever the case may be. Okay, whatever they decide, as long as they're thinking about a career, works. Okay. Again, at the top, we've got a description of what to include in there. So interviews, tours, job shadowing, basically anything that helped select or helped push you towards a higher education program. So if it's a technical program, a college or university or certification program, okay. And then if it's helping direct you towards a certain career or even away from a certain career, okay, those all count here. Again, you're going to include the year that you did the learning experience, kind of a brief activity title. And then the big thing is make sure that you're including what you learned or did, okay? So again, we've got our limitations and everything. Make sure that you're deleting any of those unused boxes, okay? Current career choice, show all the activities, okay? Some of the examples of the activities could be that you attended professional presentations, you interviewed somebody about a program or particular career, any of your school tours, facility tours, things like that. If you did any job shadowing, if you researched any colleges, universities, programs, careers on your own, mentoring or counseling. So if you've talked to your high school counselor or one of the college entry counselors, if you've maybe had a session with one of your county extension agents or club managers or club leaders on a career path that they think you might be interested in, or some of their opinions on those things, those would count. If you have any work experience, if you've done any of like the skill development courses or coursework, I think there's a few FFA chapters that usually have a like career exploration session in them. Some high school programs have some like skill development courses and things like that that you can include, okay? All of those count, okay? The big thing is like if you go on a college or university tour, okay, so which college or university did you tour? So if you went to the Texas A&M University College Tour, Which campus did you go to? What areas did you tour? Did you tour like the main area of campus? Did you tour a specific department? Was there any highlights from that tour? What did you actually learn? Did you learn about what career paths were available within that department? Did you learn about scholarship opportunities? All of those things. Okay. If you were job shadowing, who were you job shadowing? What did you job shadow them for? So what career area? If you job shadowed a veterinarian, what did you learn from that experience? Did you learn about, patient-client interaction or, doctor-patient interactions? Did you learn about how to handle the animals during difficult situations? What did you actually learn there that directed you away or to that career? Okay. All right, do y'all have any questions about the college or career exploration section? Okay. All right, so that would have been the last section in your record book. Okay, so now we're going to close the cover on that and kind of cover some general tips and guidelines. Okay. The big thing is you want to make sure that we are not including any of the old report forms that are in your record book. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is remove your old forms. So you just have your cover, and then you're going to put all of your new forms that are summarizing this year and up to 2 or 3 of the previous years, depending on your age group. Okay. As you're going through your record book, you want to make sure that you are focusing on showing growth in your project areas from year to year and within your program. Okay. We want to make sure that we've got some space between the font. We're not just all single space throughout everything. And then we have at least 10-point font. Handwriting is an option. So you are absolutely able to handwrite your record book if you would like to do so. If you are handwriting, please make sure that you handwrite it legibly or recruit a friend who can handwrite it, just so after you've put in all of that effort of handwriting and diligently laying out all the things that you've done, we can make sure that whoever's judging it can read it and you're still getting counted for all the hard work that you put into that, okay? You want to make sure that all of your freestyle selections, so those blank pages where y'all have the option of deciding how you format those sections, are easy to read and interpret. So you want to make sure that you're recruiting people to help triple check your spelling and grammar, your punctuation, make sure that it is easy to read. Even if they're not familiar with 4-H, just making sure that they can kind of understand some of the activities that you were in. That's usually very, very helpful. The more eyes you can get on your record book before it gets submitted for judging, the better. Okay. So again, we want to make sure that we're printing it one-sided. If you are actively choosing to print it double-sided, make sure that we're mentioning it in the 4-H story. If you're, if you're trying to save resources, saving money, if it's project related, if you're super into environmental sciences, whatever the case may be, just make sure that you mention that in the 4-H story. That way you don't get discounted for that, okay? The downloadable Word document that will be most of your record book forms already have the margins programmed into it. When you are creating your 4-H story and photo portfolio, you want to make sure that you're double checking the margins on that one. So the left-hand margin, so the margin that's going to be bound in your record book covers, needs to be at least 1.5 inches, or must be 1.5 inches, excuse me, just so that none of your information on the left-hand side of your page is going to be covered up by those record book covers, okay? That's just so we can make sure that none of your important information is missing. And then the rest of the borders can be 1/2 inch to 1 inch, okay? You want to make sure you're not putting in any sheet protectors or dividers, okay? So we can't have, it's basically just the regular copy paper forms that you're printing, okay? Now for your 4-H story, so you can decorate with stickers, cutouts, clip arts, things like that. The only thing that you cannot do is make sure that you are not gluing typing paper directly onto construction paper and then binding that in your book. Most of the time, what happens is, depending on the amount of glue that you had or the quality of glue, If that glue does not do its job correctly, we'll still have the construction paper, but we won't have the paper that has all of your information on it. So all of your hard work may have fallen off or fallen out of your record book, okay? So make sure that you're not gluing a full page of paper onto construction paper. If you want to decorate it or cut out or glue smaller things onto your typing paper, you are more than welcome to do so. Okay. So when we get to evaluating record books, so usually at the county level, you will get a front and back page copy of the comment sheets. And then most of us try and make sure that the judges have sticky notes where they can make comments directly in your book without writing on your paper. That way you know where we're talking about certain things and giving you feedback throughout the record book. However, at district and state judging, you will literally only get this front and back page judging sheet back, okay? This is what the judges have to go off of. So they are basically given these forms in a brief orientation and then told to get to work, okay? So they use essentially these little bullet points in each of these sections throughout your record book as a checklist for the information that should be there, okay? So again, this is one of the pages in the 4-H Family Guidebook. So for record books and everything, so you can actually print out a copy of this and kind of look through your record book and use it as a checklist to make sure that you've hit all of those points, okay? And again, if y'all have any questions about the evaluations pages or anything, just let us know. Typically, the judges do their best to try and provide y'all with some examples of information that they would like to see or some different ideas on how to improve the quality of your descriptions and things. But again, make sure that you're recruiting 2 or 3 people to help go through your record book and section by section looking for this information ahead of time, okay? The challenge of judging is really that we are only allowed to look at what is submitted in your record book that year, okay? A lot of us, I mean, y'all have seen us agents around at different events and things like that. We get to know y'all, even if y'all aren't in our county. We love getting to see what y'all are up to and talking to you about your projects. So even if we know y'all really well and we get your record book and go, oh yes, I'm excited about what the Hoffmans or the Weyerbaus are doing this year, we are only allowed to look at what is submitted in your record book. So most of the time you'll get some feedback from some of us that'll say, but what about this? That's all we can do for you, okay? Just make sure that you're double checking and making sure that everything you want to be judged is included, okay? We're looking for an overall quality of content. So the quality of your 4-H experience. Are you really directing where your 4-H project is going? Are you excited about setting goals? Are you excited about the growth and progress that you've made within that project? Or are you kind of just hanging out and doing your thing because mom and dad are making you, okay? We are going to look at the amount of detail that you're able to include in relation to how long you have been a 4-H member, okay? So if you've been a 4-H member since you were a Clover kid, it was a mandatory part of being born into your family that you would join 4-H, then we're going to look for a little bit more detail, okay? We want to see how you've grown in that project. You know, what did you do differently with it? How have you been enjoying it? And what are the main experiences you've been doing for the past, 4, 5, 6 years, okay? If you are brand new to 4-H, then we're going to take that into consideration that you would maybe kind of be exploring 2 to 3 project areas this year versus some of the others who have been doing this for a really long time, okay? If you're a junior or an intermediate or even a senior and this is your first record book, maybe you've been a 4-H member for more than 1 year, but this is your first record book that you're putting together, you need to include that in your story as well. Okay, that way we've got that to kind of judge against your information. But explain, this is my first time putting together a record book. I'm learning about the record keeping process, things like that, okay? All right, so when we get to our state 4-H record book winners, okay? So the senior 4-H members who win first place at the Texas 4-H record book judging competition are allowed to submit additional record books in future years in the same category that they won. Okay. If you place first at the state record book judging, you earn the opportunity to participate in the Texas 4-H Leadership Conference. And that's a trip usually to Washington, D.C. that's held over Thanksgiving break of the following year, the same year, I think. It would be the following 4-H year, okay? But there is a cost associated with that trip for y'all. So the cost is usually somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500, depending on the price of hotels and transportation, things like that, based on that year, okay? And then I did not get a chance to talk to Miss Connie about any of the scholarships that y'all have. So in Bastrop County and our county, our record books are part of our application processes. Miss Connie, do y'all have any county scholarships that are tied to record books?
We don't have any scholarships per se. We do have the Star Awards. And so when they turn in their record books, if they want to be thought of for one of the Star Awards, they have to turn in record books. And there's some other awards that use the record book in the interview, but we don't really have any scholarships tied to our record books in our county. But the information in those record books are what they use on all of their scholarship applications as they prepare for things. And so we know that having those record books ready, I don't know if Christy's on here, but I know that if we have the record books ready, that gives them information for them to use for all of their other scholarships.
Yes. So Miss Connie highlighted something very important. So the way that our record books are designed, they are very, very, very helpful when you are applying to a Texas college or educational program, higher education program, and then the Texas 4-H Foundation scholarships, okay? So those big applications and scholarships are very similar to your record books. If you apply for a Texas 4-H Foundation scholarship during your senior year, your graduating senior year, then literally your leadership and community service sections, if you have done a good job with them, you can actually pull those out of your record book and use those as part of your application, okay? It makes life so much easier when you're going through that process, okay? And then the Apply Texas forms for most of the universities, you're able to use those same forms to copy paste a lot of your information and summarize that information onto those applications. So it's been very, very helpful, okay? There is one scholarship program, and I don't know if y'all still have some of the TIA ladies in your county, but each county has the opportunity to be selected or to select one record book to submit to the District 10 Texas Extension Education Association. We usually just call them the TIA ladies. But as long as you have completed a record book in your 11th grade, then you would use that record book to apply during your graduating senior year of high school. And then you have the opportunity to win one of the scholarships associated with that. Again, only one will be awarded per each district, and then I think one is awarded at the state level as well, okay? I don't remember the amount that they usually go for. I will have to double check on that, okay? And then the Texas 4-H Foundation scholarships can vary anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000, okay? So if you've already got a really high quality community service and leadership application, portion of that application based on your record books, then you've already got a really solid foundation for building further on that application, okay? All right, I know that was a lot of information. I know we went through a lot of that very, very quickly as well. Do y'all have any questions that I can help you with? I say y'all are welcome to write them in the chat. Y'all are welcome to unmute yourself and ask them. I'll hang out here for a few extra minutes just in case anyone thinks of anything Other than that, y'all are welcome to email me if y'all have any questions. I'm happy to review record books ahead of time, as long as you give me maybe a week or two before your due date. Whatever y'all need.
Thank you, Mellanie. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do this. And it was wonderful. I learned a lot and I wrote some notes. And again, if you guys need help, you can reach out to any of us at the county extension office or Mellanie, and we'd be glad to help you. Again, don't wait till the last minute because it takes a little while to read those and put some comments on them.
Yes. Well, and even as y'all are working on them, try and work on them a little bit at a time. Even if it's only like maybe an hour or two each weekend or something like that, don't wait till the last minute. Something will go wrong. You will run out of ink or toner, or your printer will set itself on fire. Something will happen if you wait till the last minute. It never fails.